Hey there, I'm Scott, and this is Tangents. Well, I had the Plague one that I recorded a few weeks ago, and literally I'm just releasing it now. It's uploading as I speak on Friday, the 8th of July, 2022. It's crazy. I'm mostly recovered, although I still have a persistent cough, which is a little annoying. I'm pretty sure I'm not contagious, although I've not done a PCR test. I'd feel much more confident with nucleic acid amplification of some sort rather than just. I've done three of the antibody tests, but they're just not, they're not as sensitive. And I don't know. I do suspect that this is probably just a sequela. I've long had a problem where I get sick and then I'll recover, but I'll have this lovely sort of bronchitis for a month or two after. I think that's this. I think I probably, now that I'm thinking about it, I think I actually talked about this in one of the other ones that I recorded, um, which are going to come out, well, as soon as I can edit them. Anyway, I just had somebody talk to me on Twitter, and it was kind of funny and a little bit, I don't want to say eye-opening exactly, but maybe that is the right term. And this is somebody who I guess found my videos. I don't know how exactly, and then started watching them, and then got in touch with me. Like started following me on Twitter, and then we've engaged since then. Some back and forth, kind of aligned politically and this kind of stuff. And one thing that they said that I thought was interesting was that this is very calming and also kind of different from what you would gather from my tweets. So if you looked at my tweets, you would probably interpret my personality as being a certain way. And my tweets are absolutely like, I'm not really performing there. I probably should, but those are things that are coming from me. So those are one uh, stream from me, so to speak. But then there's also me, which is this me talking, me thinking, all this kind of stuff. And the disparity there, I think, comes from the fact that text really does not have tone attached to it. I mean, you can get a lot of tone out of text, shocking amount of tone out of text, but even so, you're not getting 100%. You're losing a lot in the translation. And then also, at the same time, I have a thing where just my temperament, and I feel very fortunate about this, honestly, but my temperament is almost disturbingly even keel. Which again, I've talked about this in the past, but I definitely do have like ups and downs and highs and lows a little bit. But even when things go really well or really badly for me, I restore to my sort of baseline, my set point, very quickly, and I I definitely don't project that I have a lot of emotional turmoil or anything like this, which is not to say that I do, but I think even relative to the level that I may have, it just doesn't come out. There are people who know me well who kind of start picking up on it and they can see that, but when I'm at my sort of strongest, I'm still pretty calm, almost weirdly calm. And apparently also extremely agreeable, almost to the point of being concerning there as well. It's both of these are not things that I'm trying to do. They're just sort of how I am. And I guess I don't know, I've always kind of felt like the calm thing, like when Gil has said that he's found listening relaxing. I always kind of, it's not that I thought that was intended as a slight, but I kind of took it as a little bit of a negative, just because, you see the things that are interesting to people, that people find exciting, and even that I listen to and I find exciting. And mostly they're not things that are just calm, right? They're things that are sort of hyped up and energetic and all this. And yeah, you have that picture of like, this is the thing in your mind. Now, of course, that thing is it. I kind of tend to think that it's probably a bad thing. I certainly the 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 version of this that's the extreme opposite of that is sort of that NPR voice, which I get a lot that, like, people think I must like NPR, or I've even had people say I should be on NPR, and just because that's my tone and cadence, and it's just, I loathe it. There's something about it. Whenever I'm in a car with somebody who has NPR on, I'm in agony. I find it excruciating to listen to. It just reminds me of that SNL NPR skit, that recurring one, and there's something about that tone and cadence which annoys me, which is weird considering that it's kind of how I project myself. Maybe it's just that I don't listen to myself, or maybe it's actually that I see myself mirrored in it and that annoys me. I don't know what it is. Whatever it is, drives me nuts. Particularly also drives me nuts because I think there's a certain version, like almost an archetype, right, of what an intellectual is. And there are a lot of people who think of someone as being intellectual if they're really, flat and kind of boring and all of this. And the thing is, and I get that too. Like, I've said this before, but like Obama giving a speech, my opinion of the man has radically gone downhill in the last few years. But even so, there's something about his tone, his cadence, the way that he speaks, the way that he carries himself, that professorial sort of, I don't know what it is exactly, but that just gets me. I have a part of me that sees that, and it's just like, yes, I want more of that. Give it to me. Turn on that fire hose. And the thing about it is, and I think that's one sort of idea of what somebody who's intellectual is, and somebody who's thoughtful. I do think that there's a danger, certainly for people like me, of seeing that kind of thing, and then you assume things about the person who's presenting that way that are just not there. Which is not to say that I don't think that he's well-educated or thoughtful or any of these things, but I would just like to think that he was a different person than he is. And I guess the truth is, if he was the person that I would like him to be, he never would have gotten to be president. So I don't know how you square that. But similarly also, like, if Bernie was the person who was going to go for the fucking jugular with his friend Joe, he never would have gotten to the place that he did. But the problem is, of course, that thing that got him to that place also meant, in Bernie's case, that he was going to let Joe steamroller him. And in Obama's case, it meant, well, because he is that way, he's going to not really implement any major changes, kind of take a big steaming dump on top of any kind of hope people might have. And it's depressing as fuck, honestly. One of the things that I think bothers me always about this, there's a thing, this is going back to the NPR voice and all that, but there's a thing, I think, that when the house is on fire, and this is actually a problem that I've had personally, because my tone and cadence is always so relaxed, and it's not just if you look at my heart rate, it'll be like, I don't know, 58 or 60 or something. The world is on fire, and yet, but because of that, people see that and they don't have the sense of urgency that they should. So a couple of times, actually more than a couple of times, I've had somebody working for me And I would say, like, you know, you really got to do this. And I, as strongly as I could convey it, like, this is going to be a problem. We're going to run into this. And you could even lay out, like, okay, this is what's going to happen. This is where we are. If you don't do these things, then down the road, we're going to end up with this problem. And I, I don't know if it's that people don't interpret my words sincerely, or if it's that I don't have that horrible panic in my voice, like, oh fuck, the house is on fire, we got to get the fuck out of here. I'm not doing that. Whatever, I think that's the problem. Whatever it is, people get that, and then they're like, okay, well, yeah, okay, so this is not a big deal. And then predictably, things don't happen, and then we get to that situation, and it's like, oh, well, here we are in the situation that I told you was going to happen. And of course, the same. Yeah, I mean, this is, and you can see me screaming, honestly, about the fucking Supreme Court. And also, I mean, overturning Roe. You know, I'm never gonna. I will drop this eventually, but you know, I've had people tell me like, "Oh, that's not gonna. Why are you even worried about that? They're not gonna overturn Roe." And then, of course, they overturn Roe because they've been working on it pretty much my entire life. Like, the Federalist Society has been just chomping at the bit, planning for this, biding their time. And also, I mean, the Kochs and a bunch of other people have been working on this as well. And using, not even because they give the slightest fuck about abortion, other than like they have some weird eugenics ideas, but aside from that, they like the subject of abortion for the same reason essentially that the Democrats like it, and for the same reason that the Democrats never do anything about it, because it's an issue that energizes people, right? And because it energizes people, they were able to get a bunch of stupid patsy Republicans out there, the people like my, you know, I'm not to call my cousin stupid, but I mean, I have a cousin who is a Republican, votes Republican, I'm sure, voted for Trump. We're not in very close contact, so I've not spoken with her really, other than like a handful of times since she was probably a teenager, and now she's, I think, in her 40s. So you know, or maybe even older. I don't know, but you know, she is, per her mom, and both of her parents were like professors and pretty, you know, they would call themselves liberals, but more lefty-ish. And yeah, there's a whole problem. Like the word liberal is so stained in my mind, not just because of the whole classical liberalism, or you know, in a lot of other countries, like liberal Democrats are the conservatives, Lib Dems, which fucks with your mind. When you're just in the US and you're just using the term here, you're just in that sort of a group of people who are using it in that sort of way. You think of it a certain way, but then you kind of increase the span of your horizons a bit, and you realize, oh, well, actually, you know, I mean, it just fucking weird thing also. Super lefties and communists use the color red, and the Republicans use the color red, and you could not have two groups that had more space between the two of them. Yeah, I mean, the whole like red versus blue, it's flipped in a lot of places. Just like, do you drive on the right or drive on the left? A lot of these things have no intrinsic, you know, they feel, because you're steeped in the society and the culture, they feel like, oh yeah, this is just blue is the Democrats, and the Democrats are the nominally kind of quasi, almost sort of a hair left of center, but not really, just further left than the Republicans, who are like crazy far right party. And you have that just sort of like almost just the association is very strong. But then you realize, oh, that association is completely arbitrary. There's no reason that it has to be that way. There's no reason that green can't mean stop and red can't mean go. But anyway, getting back, I always worry about that. I worry that, you know, I say stuff like, oh, they're going to overturn Roe. They're going to do all this other stuff. I'm convinced. This is, I know I'm repeating myself, and I apologize, but I'm repeating myself and saying this many times because it freaks me the fuck out, and I think it's a horrible thing. And you should be freaked out about it too, which is this Supreme Court, which has just in the past few weeks not only overturned Roe, but severely limited the EPA's ability to regulate. They're hinting about overturning same-sex marriage and a fucking thousand other things. They've limited the FEC's ability to regulate donations, even more than just Citizens United kind of stuff. They've just been doing so many horrible things. Basically eliminated the Miranda rights for people. They've done all of these horrible things. So many of them also, I mean, very much like when Trump was in office, you start enumerating them and it sounds like you're making shit up because there are so many and they're so bad. But anyway, they're doing these things, and what I imagine is going to happen, and this is partially based on just looking at the odds for the election outcomes in November, but the odds that I've been seeing are that it's something like 8-1 that the Democrats lose the House. They're up by like 20 seats. The odds are extremely high. Like the expectation value is that they lose about 20 seats. And yeah, so it might be close, but very, very likely they won't have the House. Maybe they get a seat or two in the Senate, although they could easily lose one or two. So do they get a net gain in the Senate? They may not. But whether they do or not, they're not going to get rid of Sinema or Manchin. And they're certainly not going to have, imagine that they got 2 extra seats. Are they going to have enough people then who will end the filibuster to pass stuff? It's not going to matter because we won't have the House. And I say I have a lot of problems with the Democrats, but I guess it sucks so much because in a better world, I would not associate with these people at all. But obviously in the world that we live in, we have plurality voting, and we basically have a basically legal duopoly. Like you cannot escape. And it sucks, especially like, okay, at a local level, it's feasible. But when you start getting to the national level, it is extremely difficult for a third party to compete, with the exception of someone like Bernie, who has put in many, many decades of work, and even he doesn't have enough there. Like he's still got to align with the Democrats, in order to even have a chance at getting the presidency. And I mean, this is one reason also why I feel like legislative in the state level reform for changing the way that we do elections and changing both the voting system. I always talk about this, but I like approval voting, but whether it's ranked choice or whatever, having more like a jungle primary, although those are problematic as well. You always have the whole arrow problem, and not just that, but there are a lot of problems with collective choice and just systems for elections. But there are other modes that are better than what we have that you could probably implement without having to make a constitutional amendment. Without that, we're kind of dead in the water. And so I use we for the Democrats without really identifying as one, because it's sort of a dichotomy, and it's like if you're not with this team, then you're with that team, and the other team is fucking horrible. I think both teams are fucking horrible, but obviously it's night and day between the two. I mean, one is definitely worse than the other. But anyway, the Democrats end up losing the House. Say they do gain a seat or two in the Senate, and the odds that I've seen still have it at about a toss-up. So, they could basically a coin toss. I think it was like 55% that they keep the seats or maybe gain one, and 45 that they lose control. So, not like the 8-1 odds. But even if they win, even if they get the Senate by a couple of seats, they're not going to have enough seats of people who are going to overturn the filibuster. And then they're not going to even try, really. And they're going to leave the Supreme Court as it is. And looking at the Supreme Court, it is absolutely maddening. And I'm calling the White House every week, at least a day or two. They have a phone line open Monday. Actually not Monday. They have it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday from like 11 in the morning to like 3 in the afternoon. Maybe it is even 2 in the afternoon. It's only staffed by volunteers. It's a giant pain in the ass to get into. And they want you to say your piece and then get the fuck off the phone because they're very busy. And I've been calling and just begging to expand the court. I know they're not going to do it, but I feel like I have there's not a lot that I can do. So the little things like that I can do, I'm trying to do. But they lose Congress, and even if they decided to try to expand it with the Senate, they're not going to be able to do it in the House, probably. And they're not going to try to do this anyway. So it's like layers of fucked up. And so you have a mixed, either Republican-controlled House or both after the election. Well, I guess after a couple months after the election, but they're on vacation so fucking much. It's not like they're gonna like bang out a ton of stuff as lame ducks. So leave the Supreme Court in the state that it's in, and then and then you have 2 years to the 2024 elections, and first off, in the intervening time, they're gonna do a bunch of other horrible decisions, but also they're gonna get. I think. I don't know. I really suspect. Because so many Republican state legislatures have done things which enabled them to override the electoral selection of the populace. I think we're going to have a situation. It could be worse than this, in the sense that the popular vote goes for Trump, or the Electoral College goes for Trump. But I imagine a scenario which I feel like is more likely than not, where he actually loses the popular vote, and even loses, or would have lost, the Electoral College. But all it takes, because things are probably going to be pretty close, all it takes is one or several of these states to override the popular vote's elector selection, and then put in Trump electors, and then Trump wins the Electoral College, even though he shouldn't, by the ridiculous rules of the Electoral College. And then you have like a Biden v. Trump Supreme Court case, which, of course, look at this fucking Supreme Court. So then you get basically this illegitimate court installing an illegitimate president. And of course, the Democrats have at this point completely squandered their ability to do anything. And they're just so, I don't know. Again, I talked about this episode or two back, but I don't think they're feckless. I think that they're doing it on purpose. But even so, I think they don't appreciate the dire gravity of the situation. I think they're kind of like, oh, this is just a normal kind of back and forth. It's all pro wrestling to them. They feel like, oh, look at these stupid idiots. They're believing that the pro wrestling is real. And yeah, on one hand, okay, maybe I'm just falling for the pro wrestling, but I don't think so. I think the situation is basically fucked. And I think by the time they realize it's not pro wrestling, it'll be too late, and we'll all be fucked. Which is, again, one of the reasons why I very seriously keep debating about, like, do I leave the country, or do I try to use my little bit of privilege and stay here and push things? And then you think about also, if you were in Germany, um, you know, first off, is there anything you could have done to push back? And second, um, and if you did, I mean, like probably end up getting killed. Would it have worked? Would it, or is it just like the tide is coming in and you can get crushed by the tide, or you can get the fuck out of the way? And yeah, neither option is really good. I feel like on some level you have to fight, but at the same time, like I'm not saying it's hopeless, but I mean, it seems like extremely, extremely dire. And I don't know, it freaks me the fuck out. And I hate the fact that you have Biden in this leadership position. I mean, if you can call it that, just completely ignoring the situation. He does get bullied into doing things, but he gets bullied into, oh, we're just going to put up an executive order to kind of pretend to do something about Roe, but it's not really going to have that much teeth, and it's going to, even to the extremely limited extent that it does anything, it's going to get overturned by the same fucking Supreme Court that he's not fixing. Yeah, and you just look at this, and it's just, it will not. I mean, this is another thing that drives me insane. You have Manchin and Sinema, and I talk about this shit all the time, but Manchin is the chair of energy and natural resources. If there's anyone who should not be heading a fucking committee, it's specifically him. And yet, and that's even without considering, I mean, just the conflict of interest there, without getting into the fact that we have a climate catastrophe. And then when you add that to it, it's like he's deciding what shit gets to go to the floor for, I mean, it's just fucking crazy. And then both he and Sinema are both on, I think, like 4 committees each. And they've had no consequences. They've had no pressure. Biden has praised them both. Yeah, I mean, not only won't do anything, won't even say a slightly harsh word against either one of them, and just says positive things about them. And then I get people yelling at me on Twitter saying, "Oh, you're Scott, you're such a fucking asshole. Why are you shitting on the Democrats?" And I'm not. The thing is, I'm sitting there saying, like, please, motherfuckers, do something while you still have the chance, because pretty soon you're not going to have a chance, and pretty soon we're all going to be fucked because of it. And I'm not like, that's not me supporting the Republicans. That's me going, I know how fucking bad the Republicans are, and I know what's coming, and I can see what's coming, not because I am, a prophet who just has some kind of clairvoyance and is able to see into the future. It's not that. It's just because it's fucking obvious. You're on a train going full speed toward a cliff. You don't need to be that much of a genius to just look out the window and go like, shit, we should do something. Like, maybe we should stop. Maybe we, and yet, I mean, it's just like the same shit. It's the same shit with Trump. Like, so many people just did not think he was going to win. They thought, I mean, people make fun of Hillary for the whole Pied Piper thing, but she was by far that was the opinion most people had at the time. He couldn't win, he was just a joke, all this stuff. And I was sitting there like freaked out about it. And, I'm not trying to frame myself as Cassandra here, but I feel like that, I feel like I'm sitting here like trying to say like, look at this fucking thing. Maybe we should do something about it. I can see what's coming, and it's not some like wild ass guess. It's like literally, you see, it's like looking at a tic-tac-toe fucking board and saying, okay, well, this is the situation. There are 2 X's here, and it's your move. And you could just fucking obviously go like, okay, put a fucking O there to block. And the people who are actually making the decisions are like, oh no, we're just gonna do this other thing because that's not a bit. Why are you even concerned about this? And also, why are you undermining us by like, are you trying to make us lose? It's just like, I can't even. It makes you feel fucking insane. I would love to learn that this was either some kind of sick, sadistic psychological experiment or basically like some kind of purgatory or hell. Because then, not because I want to be in those situations, but because at least then it would make sense, you know? At least then you could go like, oh, I know why things are fucked up like this, because of this. You know, and in fact, you could even go like, oh, I don't care, because this is just this. There's a certain level of like, oh, this is just an experiment, or oh, I'm just being tortured. So you can kind of, I'm not saying like relax into it, but at least there's something there. But you look at the situation and you think like, this is fucking crazy. Do something. And then you get yelled at by people that are like, you know, you're fucking hurting the Democrats. Like, motherfucker, no. No, I'm trying, I'm begging them to do something. And you should be, frankly, rather than sitting there on Twitter shitting on me and going like, oh, you're hurting the, fucking yell at Biden. Fucking yell at Schumer and Sinema and fucking Chuckles. That, you know, like these people who are in positions of power, and something like, I don't know, 100th or is it 1,000th of a percent? I can't remember the percentage. I'm not even going to do the calculation because, yeah, but a very, very tiny fraction of the population is in a position to do anything. And they are not. And they should be held fucking to account, you know? Ah, man, it's a fucked up situation. So I may come off as calm, and I am relatively calm. And again, like I talk about this, my heart rate is basically like 60-ish. So you know, it's like, yeah. But that doesn't mean that the situation is calm. It doesn't mean that being calm in this situation is appropriate. And it certainly doesn't mean that you should take my calmness as an indication that, you know, the house is not on fire. You know, my temperament puts me in that state. I'm very fortunate about it because I know people who are like freaked out and wild and erratic even when things are calm around them, whereas I can be in this situation and I'm relatively calm. Even when I assume like even when I'm getting what I would consider to be heated, or not heated, I guess, but you know, energized, or I'm trying to be dramatic about something, it's still calm. You know, it still comes off as like chill, a little bit zen. And sure, on a long enough time scale, it doesn't matter. You know, if you're gonna go not even a billion years out into the future, the sun is gonna push out so much extra energy that the planet's gonna dry up and life will cease, unless people do some star lifting or some serious geoengineering. But we're not a billion years out, and we're probably not going to be there very, you know, we're here, we're now, and the situation is very dire now, and it matters now. You know, 1,000 years from now, who knows? But I live right now, you know, I know a lot of people that live right now. Most of the people I know, they're living right fucking now. It matters to them, yeah. And if you let this shit go, it's going to be very fucked, and it will take it's going to take a long time and a lot of effort. You know, once tyrants get into power, I mean, you just look at. I'm not trying to get too much of a parallel with like World War II era Germany, but look at the time that it took from Hitler gaining power, and all this kind of what is his name, von Hindenburg, and all this bullshit, letting, you know, well, I was gonna say letting. It seems like he was kind of in on it, but you know, like basically giving power to Hitler and making him chancellor and doing all this kind of stuff. You go through all that history up to the point where he did the world a favor and blew his brains out in the stupid bunker. That was not a year, you know, you think, and it was not inconsequential. Now, granted, it's not 100 years, although things could go south and then be fucked up for, you know, decades, easily. Things could go south and have big wars. They could have, you know, I mean, like so many horrible things could happen. Like the outcome where it's a decade might be optimistic. And a lot of bad shit will happen in that decade. And if it's more than a decade, and especially if it's a lot more, you know, like I do think in the long run, you probably, as long as there are people and as long as it's not completely insurmountable, things will change. But it could take a very long time. I mean, if you imagine, you look at Trump. Trump's father died, I think, in his 90s. Trump is now in his 70s. I can't do that math in my head while I'm recording, obviously, but that's at least a couple years where if he got power and he wasn't going to step down, that should scare the shit out of you. And he's not the only one. Like, he is the vanguard of these horrible people, but there are other people who are much less ridiculous than he is. There are other people who are, you know, much more devious than he is. Not that he's not devious, but that he's somewhat tempered, what was it, malice tempered by stupidity. Whereas there are other people who have the malice, but not so much the stupidity. And they're, the only thing that's like slightly less scary about them is that people don't really, like, they're attracted to him viscerally somehow, which I've never understood. I feel like honestly, it's probably, they had like an alcoholic father or abusive parent or whatever, and there's something that resonates with him in them. But whatever it is, I don't give a shit. I don't understand it. I don't care to understand it, but I know it is there and it is fucked. And I would like people to, you know, and especially actually the same people who are like yelling at me are enthralled with this January 6th hearing stuff. And the thing about that is, yeah, I totally agree. This was a horrible thing. Trump is a traitor. All these things. Yes, yes, yes. Check, check, check. Fucking use the 14th Amendment, Section 3 to block him from holding office. They could do that right now with a simple majority, and it would take a supermajority in both houses to reverse it. Not that the Supreme Court, you know, I mean, the Supreme Court, obviously, like, nothing is, they can do whatever the fuck they want, which is a really dumb system. But, yeah, at least try. At least fucking try. Like, even if it was just pro wrestling and it's just for show, try. Like, act like you're fucking trying. Act like you give a shit. Because right now the message that I'm getting is you don't care. And you're not even, like, it's just not a thing. And even with the January 6th hearings, like, are we really going to see prosecutions? I'm not at all optimistic. I would love to be proven wrong there. I would love to see real consequences. But I don't think they're likely. And I have this horrible feeling also that even if there are real consequences, like, Biden would fucking pardon the motherfucker. Like, yeah, which just, I mean, the fact that I feel like that is a realistic possibility is just, I mean, I just despise it, and there are many reasons why I don't like Obama now as much as I once did. But the one thing that makes me just despise the motherfucker is the whole like accelerating the end game, pushing Biden into the nomination. Like, and also like sitting there whispering to people how dangerous Bernie is and all this kind of shit. It's just like, it's such a shame, because here's a person whose whole branding was hope and change. And then he comes out and stabs hope and change in the fucking back. You know, just shivs them. I mean, you know, it's depressing. It's so fucking, this is the thing that gets me. Like, the situation that we're in and the situation that we're likely to be in does not have to be like that. We could change course. You could pull that thing and turn the trolley down the other track. Things could be better. And yet the people who are in the positions to do that stuff are refusing to. And not only that, but you've got people who are in a position to criticize them and to demand that they actually do their jobs. And they're, instead of criticizing them, doing that stuff, they're running defense for them and coming in and yelling at the people who are begging them to do their fucking jobs. It kills me. It really kills me. So anyway, with that, I think that's it for now. I feel like I'm kind of meandering, and yeah, I think that's pretty calm. So, you know, home and all that. With that, this is one thing actually that there's that white power mudra, which I'm not going to make, but when I would do yoga, that is a mudra that I liked a lot, and it annoys the shit out of me that these motherfuckers have stolen it, basically. And you know, now if I would just habitually like have my hands, I mean, not like up, but you know, like down in that mudra, and it just annoys me now because somebody who doesn't know that could see that and think, oh, well, that's the white power symbol. That's fucking great. You know, like fuck these people for like a million reasons, but also fuck them for that reason, because they've kind of, not that I couldn't just, you know, plow through it, but it's like, it's kind of, you know, it's kind of contaminated. Don't need to do that. Anyway, so annoying. With that, thank you. Stay calm, all that stuff. And Zaijian.